All right, coming at you with the next part in the Knives That Every American Should Own series. So today, um, in this segment, this is not necessarily a certain brand and model of a knife that you should own. It is more of a style or design of knife that you should own. And the next segment in this series will be like that as well. But today, as you probably saw in the title, the knife every American should own, a Bowie knife. The Bowie knife. This particular one is the Case brand Bowie. This was actually my wife got this for me for my birthday. It was like the very first knife, along with the Case Mako that I got for my newfound interest in knives and stuff. Found them through Donnie B All Day's videos. So Donnie B All Day, the master of the Case Bowie. So that's what I got. If you need a Bowie knife, you don't have to own the Case one, although it's a good one. We'll probably go out and use this a little later today. Donnie B All Day. It's probably one of his earliest videos. It's kind of surreal, the fact that I now have like as many subscribers on this channel as Donnie B All Day did when I first found him, and he was doing videos on the Case Bowie knife. There's one other channel out there that did a Bowie knife video on like I don't know, like top 5 Bowie knives or something. It's a budget bug out. He did a pretty good video, and he liked the Case Bowie knife a lot too. It's pretty cool. This particular Bowie knife from Case is styled after the model V44 Bowie from World War II. It was issued to troops in the Pacific, not necessarily just as a fighting knife, but to hack through all of the tropical vegetation there on the islands in the Pacific when American troops were fighting the Japanese. So that's what this is. It's World War II era design called the V44. Bark River also makes a similar V44 design. If you want to get a Bowie knife, you know, I mentioned all these knives in my my series here are made in America. That's why they're knives every American should own. You won't really find a ton of Bowie knives made in America that are made by, you know, big production companies. You have Case that makes this one. You can get the Ontario. I think it's the Spec 10 Raider Bowie. That's a very affordable one. I'm pretty sure Scab at Choir Boys Cutlery did a video on that one not too long ago. I'm pretty sure Donnie B All Day, I know he did a video on that. He loves his Bowie knives. But that you can have, typical price I see now is like $60 on that. I don't own one, but that's a heck of a good price for a full-size Bowie knife. That one's a little more modern, has a rubberized handle. I don't know what this material is. It's some sort of synthetic material, probably maybe the same synthetic material Case uses on their as handle scales for their pocket knives, like sod busters and trappers and whatnot. But a lot of Bowie knives today are like cheap Chinese stuff you can get for $30 on Amazon or wherever you buy knives. But there's also some U.S. companies, like I mentioned, Bark River. They make a super cool Bowie knife called the Shining Mountain Bowie, but that'll run you about $300. So if that's in your budget, go get you a $300 Bowie knife. It's the Bark River Shining Mountain Bowie is actually the knife that Brad Pitt had in the movie Inglourious Bastards, where he was, you know, scalping Nazis over in Europe in World War II. So it's definitely a cool knife to have. His in that movie was aftermarket handled. He had like a stag antler handle there. So a little bit of background on the Bowie knife, and more Jim Bowie himself, whatever. This isn't a grammar channel. So Jim Bowie is a pretty cool character, and this is going to be a total history lesson, not just about knives. I like Jim Bowie. Had to wear my Bowie shirt for the review. So Jim was born in around 1796 in Kentucky. His family then moved out to Missouri and made their way south to Louisiana, where Jim Bowie spent the majority of his life. His family owned plantations on the frontier there in Louisiana. We'll get into all the dirty details of modern era. Jim Bowie's family 100% owned slaves. They were a family in the South with plantations. It was the way it was at the time. Doesn't make it right, but it was the way it was. And Jim Bowie was a bit of a scoundrel. He and his brother got involved in the slave trade a lot, but the little bit later than first, his family, Jim grew up on the frontier. He was he would have been an outdoorsman, grown up, knowing how to be self-sufficient with hunting and fishing for food for his family. He and his older brother Reason probably did a lot of that. Eventually they joined up with the U.S. military to fight in the War of 1812. They joined in very late 1814 and were beginning to make their way to New Orleans to fight under General Andrew Jackson against the British there. But by the time they arrived, the Battle of New Orleans had taken place with General Jackson the victor, and with the United States actually winning that war against Great Britain. The war was actually officially over before this Battle of New Orleans took place, but good on James and his brother Reason for enlisting and going off to defend a very young United States of America. There was a character in the story of the Battle of New Orleans who helped Andrew Jackson, a local pirate who operated in the Gulf of Mexico by the name of Jean Lafitte. I forget the name in the movie, but there was a movie made back in the 1950s, I think, where Yul Brynner played this pirate, Jean Lafitte, and Charlton Heston played Andrew Jackson in a small role. So those fellas well known for the movie Ten Commandments, which I'm sure will be on TV very soon. Posting this video as Easter is coming up. One of the networks always shows that movie at Easter time. So anyway, the reason I bring up the pirate Jean Lafitte is that Jim and his brother Reason got involved with this pirate in the slave trade. But at this point, we're at in between 1815 and to 1820s, the United States had outlawed the importation of slaves from Africa. So any slaves in the United States from this point to 1865 were, born and raised in the United States of America. This pirate, Jean Lafitte, got slaves from Africa. And I mean, I don't think he went over there and got the people from Africa, but he would have got them through trade from the Caribbean Isles. And he had a pirate headquarters off the coast of Galveston, Texas, and the Galveston Island there. And Jim and his brother Reason used to go over there and buy these slaves from him, which would be illegal because they were straight from Africa and not born in the United States. So they had quite the scam going, because there were rewards from like the U.S. Customs agents that they would take these slaves back to Louisiana where they lived and say these are illegal slaves imported from Africa, and they would get money from the U.S. Customs office for them, like or something. I'm sorry, I might have a little mixed up, but they got money. They got like half of what they bought these slaves from Jean Lafitte, and the slaves, even though it was illegal to import them, they still went up for auction. Okay, the government wasn't being nice. That's the the issues we have with the America of the past. Even though it was illegal to import these people, they were still sold at auction. It was just sold by the government instead of private individuals. But the Bowie brothers were able to get these illegally obtained slaves at a super cheap price from these government customs agents, and then resell them for a very good profit throughout Louisiana. They did that for several years, and the Bowie brothers also got heavily involved in land speculation. So you may remember from your history that Louisiana was purchased by President Thomas Jefferson from the French Emperor Napoleon in 1803. He bought Louisiana, and Louisiana has had a long history with both the French and the Spanish. New Orleans area was controlled by Spain for a while in the 18th century, before reverting back to the French. So when the United States purchased Louisiana, the government decided that they would honor all these older land grants and purchases from the French and Spanish government. So Jim Bowie and his brother Reason, growing up in Louisiana, they both learned to speak and write both Spanish and French fluently. And they started forging all these documents, pretending to be that the documents they forged were all written out as land grants from names that they made up that were French and Spanish. And they filed these land claims with the government and sold off this supposed land to new people who were coming to Louisiana to settle, and it was very profitable until finally people up in Washington figured out, hey, all these Spanish land grants and French land grants and such, they all have these people's names, all these people's names on that nobody's ever heard of, and they're all written in the same handwriting. So the Bowie brothers land speculation there got shut down after a little while. So Jim Bowie, he was a young man in his 20s and 30s, single, out on the town at the taverns like any fellow would be. He ran into a guy named, I believe his name was Norris Wright, and got into some confrontation with him and I think a couple other guys at a tavern, and I believe Jim Bowie was shot and got the crap kicked out of him by these guys. And he vowed never to be unarmed again. And Big Brother Reason gifted him a large knife to carry him at all the time, which he did until the day he died, March 6th, 1836. This would have been the event I just spoke of, would have been in about 10 years prior, 1826 or so. So Jim carried a big old knife wherever he went. No one knows what Jim Bowie's original knife looks like. Nobody knows. Probably not like this. Probably look like a kitchen butcher knife. But anyway, it doesn't really matter what it really looked like. It was just a big old knife. Jim Bowie eventually met up with this Norris Wright character again when acquaintances of theirs were they had scheduled a duel, which was a thing of Southern gentlemen at the time, and they scheduled this duel outside the town of Natchez, Mississippi, in September of 1827, on a sandbar alongside the Mississippi River. And the duel was rather insignificant. The two gentlemen who were quarreling took a couple of shots at each other, both missed, and decided to call it a draw, shake hands, and go their merry ways. But some of the people who had come along with them as witnesses or seconds in the duel, they didn't care much for each other either, and a melee fight broke out. Jim Bowie was seriously injured once this broke out. He was shot at least once. He was stabbed. And this Norris Wright fellow came up to him with a sword cane. If you can believe that. People actually had them, walked around town with them back then. Sword hidden inside the cane. And while Jim Bowie was on the ground, he stabbed him with his sword cane. And he got up real close to Jim and wanted to push it in further and take Jim Bowie's life. But Jim, as I said, he carried that big old knife with him till the day he died. He whipped out that knife and disemboweled this fella right then and there, killing him. Well, I think he disemboweled him and then drove the knife through his heart. That's the story. That's the badass story. But anyways, this since Jim Bowie had been shot a couple times and stabbed multiple times, he had to be taken to get medical aid as quickly as possible, and it took him months to recover from the wounds he received in this action, which came to be known as the sandbar fight. And tales were told because all these other guys were there and saw Jim take out that big old knife, and he became kind of a legend as a knife fighter because of this incident. Legend in his own time, and term Bowie Knife spread like wildfire, and eventually people started everybody wanted a big old knife, which it was actually quite useful as a weapon at the time, because as you may know, guns could only hold one bullet at a time. So if you have that one shot, you might not have time to reload before your enemy comes in and attack it. So you better have some sort of backup. You only got one shot. So a big old knife is better than a small knife, because you can put that distance between yourself and your attacker. So they definitely had their time and practicality in history. After that sandbar fight, Jim Bowie eventually made his way to Texas, started up some land, some shady kind of land speculation again there. Eventually married into a wealthy family. He had a young wife. Her father was like what we would call like a lieutenant governor in a lot of our states here in America today. So he's a high-ranking political official and very wealthy. But Jim enjoyed his time there in Texas. Another famous incident is he he had a party of a dozen guys, himself included, left San Antonio, which is where he spent a lot of his time. That's where his wife's family lived while they were in Texas. They went to find the lost San Saba mine, which was a supposed mine at some point for gold or silver or some precious metal. And they went to find it and were met by a large party of hostile Indian tribes. They tried to negotiate some peace, but it did not work out. And Jim Bowie, his brother Reason, was with him on this venture, and 10 other guys. So there was a dozen in total. They fought the San Saba battle there against about 160 of a group of it was 3 Indian tribes. I can't remember their names. One of the tribes that was in the area but did not fight against the Bowies and their party was the Comanches. The Comanches actually went to San Antonio to tell the folks there that the Bowies were in a heap of big doo-doo. 12 guys versus like 160. But these guys fought these Indians along the San Saba River there while they were looking for this mine for, I believe, 13 hours. They lasted against like 14-1 odds. They were in a cove of trees alongside the river, which they were able to use for cover. A lot of grass outside along the river that the Indians would come through, and I think the Indians eventually set fire to all that grass, and eventually retreated because these guys, led by the Bowies, they killed and wounded many, probably almost half of that raiding party. I want to say the Indians took like 70 casualties, where the Texas guys there, one man was killed, and that's all. So it's a pretty remarkable story. You can do further reading on that. After this, Bowie's wife and her parents eventually died from a cholera epidemic that swept through the area. It's said that Bowie's 2 children died in this epidemic as well, but it's not. Historians debate on whether or not he actually had children. During his marriage, he actually spent a lot of time away on business and may not have actually had time to do a lot of baby making. His father-in-law wanted him to set up textile mills and such in the Texas area. So he was back in Louisiana a lot, trying to gain capital for these business ventures. But he lost his wife in 1833, which I guess led Jim to be quite depressed and take to drink and all that, which he's portrayed as a drunk in some of the Hollywood movies out there. But anyway, Jim eventually joined up in what would become the Texas Revolution. There was a Mexican president by the name of Bustamante who was, doing stuff people didn't like, and was overthrown by Antonio de Lopez de Santa Anna, who would become quite the villain, but was originally supported by the people of Texas. Funny thing about the Texas Revolution is a big part of it was over immigration issues. Americans coming into Mexican territory. Santa Anna in 1835 actually banned immigration to Mexico. Texas was part of Mexico at the time. He banned immigration from the United States into Mexico. How the tables have turned today, right? So these guys in Texas, they wanted more Americans to come settle there because it was a great place to live, I guess. And they didn't like these immigration bans, and eventually some of the Mexican army came to confiscate weapons. Sound familiar? And the Texas Revolution started, and Jim was involved in an early battle called the Battle of Concepcion, um, where it was a good victory for the Texans earlier on in the Revolution, and he was part of it till his death, March 6th, 1836, at the Alamo. Um, Definitely look up some facts on Jim Bowie. Uh, he was definitely an interesting character, and the stuff I shared is really a lot. Most of the stuff that's known about him. I mean, of course, left out some cool fun facts, but I recommend the book Three Roads to the Alamo by William C. Davis. It's a biography of the three principal characters that were at the Alamo: Jim Bowie, Davy Crockett, and William Barrett Travis. Uh, there's not really a whole lot of stuff known about Jim Bowie, the historical person, because he didn't leave behind a lot of letters and writing, and that's where historians get their information from primary sources that people would have written down. But Jim Bowie didn't have a lot. Um, his brother Reason outlived him, but didn't really write a lot down either. He did publish an account of the San Saba fight that I mentioned a little bit ago, but there's another biography out there, Jim Bowie. I haven't actually read this one. It's by I think it's just called Bowie, by a guy named Clifford Hopewell. But it's less than 200 pages long. Biography of a kind of a famous character of American history. Even though he did renounce his citizenship and become a Mexican, that's what he had to do to go to Texas at the time under Mexican rule. So he actually didn't die an American. He was Mexican, but that's no matter. If he would lived, he would have become an American again once Texas was annexed into the United States and became a state long after the Texas Revolution. But anyway, Jim Bowie, still, these big old knives bear his name, and he is remembered through all history as being a knife guy. So, Bowie knife, you gotta own one. Every American should own a Bowie knife.